different kinds of animals. Okay. Now, artificial selection, it doesn't have to be on purpose. So let's say we have the wolves that we had originally with stone tool making people. And some wolves would follow humans around because they would leave messy carcasses all over the place parts they didn't use. And it's a lot easier to eat something that's already dead than to go chase it yourself. And over time, the wolves, those individuals that were less afraid of humans, were the ones that were hanging around, and they had a steady food supply, and they produced more baby wolves than the ones that were out hunting on their own. Eventually, the wolves that were not as aggressive were the ones that did better around humans. The humans weren't saying, oh, I want you to be hanging around me. No, it was just that those that were already tamer, less aggressive, did better. Okay. It was only later that humans decided, oh, it'd be nice if a dog had certain traits, like some dogs are really into retrieving things, golden retrievers, all that, and they started breeding for that trait. They took individuals who were good at retrieving, they bred them together, then they took the pups, the ones that were better at retrieving, they bred them together until over time you have this behavior that's basically very stable. Okay. Now the thing is, natural selection is just like this, but there's no selector out there. It's only the environment. So we've got this horse race. This is Secretariat, won Belmont by 28 3/4 lengths back in the 70s. Clearly the fastest horse. Okay. One of the fastest horses ever. They bred horses for going fast, for races, right? That's artificial selection. In nature, how could you end up with faster horses? What makes you run fast?
Just practicing, like laps and stuff.
Sure, but that's not. What would really make you run fast? Fear, right?
Oh, yeah.
Abject terror is going to make you run faster. Okay, so you're getting chased. Some of you are going to be running faster than others, right? Who's going to survive? The faster runners. You don't actually have to be the fastest.
Smartest.
Than the slowest, right? So as if there's one slow, everybody else can, right?
You don't have to outrun the prey, you just have to outrun the slower.
Yes, exactly. Okay? You know, you can say, oh, poor Johnny, but that's pretty much how it goes, right? Johnny's not going to survive. You are. Okay. So, now, natural selection is the process. Evolution by natural selection is the mechanism by which you get adaptations. So you can actually have natural selection without any evolution going on. As you probably know, you've done Darwinian snails, right? And if all the individuals, if there's no variation, there's no evolution, even if there's selection. Or if there's no heritability, there's no evolution either. And so it's possible to have evolution without natural selection and natural selection without evolution. Okay. And then the question is evolution only restricted to biological populations? So I'm going to ask you, can you think of anything else that evolves? Do you guys all have cars? Okay, let's say some of you have cars, right? Why did you buy cars?
We have to get around for transportation.
Okay, and what made you buy the car that you have versus some other car?
I'm broke.
Exactly. Okay, so certain cars are cheaper than others, right? That's a trait. Cheap cars are going to be, everybody wants them. Well, not everybody, but certainly people who are broke. Okay, right? What else about cars?
The model.
The model, okay. The way performance. Some gas mileage. Let's say they don't want to spend all that money on gas. Others, they don't care what they spend. They want to look hot, like a Ferrari. Okay? So that's natural selection. We're choosing which cars we want, but we're not deciding. It's basically natural evolution by natural selection in cars. Same thing with ideas. Ideas are, we throw them out into the marketplace. Some ideas stick around more than others or better than others. For example, the whole development of science, a new way of thinking. Okay? There's other ways of thinking. Some of them go in and out of style over time. Okay. So it says, is evolution by natural selection different than natural selection? Is it possible to have natural selection without evolution? Yeah. You did Darwinian snails. If the individuals, if the trait was not heritable, did evolution happen? There was still selection, right? You still might have some individuals that are more likely to survive, but it wouldn't matter because the offspring they have could just as likely to have thin shells or thick shells. Or is it possible to have evolution without natural selection? Well, we'll see that in fact, yes. It's also possible to have evolution without natural selection because there's other forces that we're going to learn about besides natural selection, including mutation, genetic drift, things like that. We'll get to. Okay, so we'll stop there, and we'll continue on about evolution by natural selection and actually how it works. And I'll make sure everybody gets credit for that top hat. Okay, so evolution in terms of your success is all about sex and death. Okay? The more sex you have, the better. And the more you avoid death, the better. Okay? Also, you'll be happier in general, avoiding death and having sex. And it's basically, now it's not because I'm trying to subvert you and turn you into hedonists or anything like that, but the more offspring you have, the more you're going to pass your genes on to future generations. And that's basically the coin of the realm, okay? That's how you know if you've won. Now, of course, humans, we don't necessarily follow that rule because we might want to do other things besides have lots and lots and lots of babies, which, frankly, are a mess. So, but still, this is what it's about. And this really has to do with evolutionary fitness, or what we call evolutionary fitness, which is a combination of survival and reproduction. Actually, it's really about reproduction. But normally, we think about it, we have to survive long enough to reproduce. So, this is how you tabulate who are the winners and who are the losers. So evolution by natural selection. So there's natural selection, which is a process, and there's also evolution, which combines with natural selection to give you what's called adaptation. So any consistent difference in survival and or reproduction among genotypically or phenotypically different classes of organisms within a population that can breed. Okay? In other words, individuals that have the right alleles for that environment or have the right phenotype are the ones that are more likely to survive or reproduce. Okay? So we've been mainly talking about survival because most people think about survival of the fittest. But there, as we're going to learn, there's more to it than that. So when an organism, for example, let's say we have wolves, and they have thick fur coats, and that allows them to survive cold weather up in the Arctic, right? Let's say the weather gets colder. Now, not all of them have the same thickness of fur coat. Okay, there's variation, but it's all around a specific thickness. But let's say it gets colder, those individuals who have thicker coats compared to everybody else are going to survive better. They're not going to spend as much energy trying to stay warm, and they're probably going to have more offspring. Okay? So those wolves are better adapted to that environment. That means the environment and the phenotype that they have gives them an advantage and makes them adaptive. That doesn't mean that thick fur coats are always adaptive. It depends on the environment. So what would happen if the weather got warmer? Anybody? Yeah, exactly. So individuals who had slightly thinner coats would be favored. They would reproduce, and then over time, you'd finally get to a point where it's kind of the optimal thickness of the fur coat. Okay? So there's no such thing as a perfectly adapted organism. There's trade-offs, usually, in what the actual trait is and how that fits the environment. So adaptation is any trait that increases an organism's evolutionary fitness, and fitness is a combination of survival and reproduction. Okay. Now, natural selection is strictly individuals that are more fit with their environment compared to others. Okay? That's all it is. And they're born that way, right? It's not like I can decide, oh, it'd be much better if I had wings, and that would raise my fitness. It doesn't work that way. I was born without wings. I'm not going to develop wings or anything like that. So kind of like the card game that we played, you know, a full house, a pair, whatever it is, the better the cards, the more offspring you produce. But the only difference is that the cards' values that you got might change in response to the environment. So in one environment, you have a full house. In another environment, you have nothing. Okay? So selection acts on individuals and the traits they have. They can't change those traits. If those traits fit the environment, great. If they don't, you're out of here. Okay. And then because of that, because a population is a group of individuals that can breed together, those individuals that have the traits compared to other individuals who don't have that variant of the trait, they leave more offspring, and over time the population changes so that there are more of your descendants compared to the losers. Okay? Okay. So here we have we've got selection. So who's doing the selecting here? The bird or the beetles? And they're selecting the beetles, right? Okay. And they like green beetles. We'll say they probably like green beetles because they stand out better against the background. In other words, they're better camouflaged than the orange beetles, or perhaps the orange beetles are toxic and they avoid those. Whatever it is, the orange beetles from generation to generation, from one time period to the next, are going to survive better because the green beetles are juicy and good and the other ones, forget it. Okay? Eventually, all you have left are orange beetles. The birds don't like those. They reproduce. Eventually, the whole population is all orange. Okay. So populations evolve. And in this case, the phenotype, and there's probably an underlying genotype in terms of the alleles and what color the beetles are. That's what makes them either more or less fit. Okay. So, if a lion eats you, a lion, big lion, right? Okay. If a lion eats you, is that natural selection?
No,
Why?
because it wasn't natural, he was just hungry.
What do you mean? It's not natural to be hungry?
No, but like,
Let's say a lion ate a gazelle. Is that natural selection?
yeah,
Okay, so what's the difference between a gazelle and me?
that they're not human.
So humans aren't natural.
Well, like, they're not like supposed to.
I'm a natural man.
Like,
Completely natural. That some people call me Mr. Natural. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm completely natural. I do all the natural things. I eat food. I pee. All the things that natural organisms do. So how am I not natural?
I mean, you're not just part of their like normal diet. I mean,
Well, listen, now hold on a second. In Africa, lions eat people all the time. Are you just saying, oh, it's just
I mean,
only
yeah,
Africans?
I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't tried.
So are you an animal?
I mean, biologically, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So does that make you any different than any other animals?
Yeah,
Why?
because we're humans.
So what?
So you're saying a cat and a dog are the same?
No, they're different. But
Yeah, so
one's
we're-
not better than the other and one's not more natural than the other.
Okay.
They're not. I'm a total animal. I mean, in the worst sense of the word.
So is it natural selection?
Okay, so yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
Anything that affects,
As long as you can get the answer.
good. Well, I want you to understand that
Yeah.
some people think that anything with humans is not natural. Okay? But we're as much a part of the natural world as anything else. Any other living thing. We're not special. You may think we're special. I mean, I think there's certain humans that are special. Okay? I just like them better. That's why they're special to me. But in general, humans are animals. They've been affected by the same forces that affect other animals and other organisms. Okay? And it turns out that humans, by the way, have evolved. Okay? So we've changed, human populations have changed over time, and they're still changing. So we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, now, here's another one. If you get the boy, and some other woman doesn't, is that natural selection? Why?
Because I chose him.
Huh?
Because he chose me.
Okay. He chose you. So that's not selection?
Yeah, but it was based off his preference, not like the...
So, okay, so it doesn't have to do necessarily with survival, right?
Right.
But who's more likely to leave offspring? You or the girl that wasn't chosen? Who? Well, look at, I mean, he chose you because he's attracted to you, right? Okay. He wants to have sex with you.
Right.
I hope I'm not in trouble now. But strictly speaking, biologically, okay, you both want to have sex. You get pregnant, you have kids. You have more kids than the individual that wasn't chosen. Okay, has the population changed because you have traits that make you more attractive than someone else?
If I have more kids, then...
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so it's not just survival, it's how often you reproduce, and if you have a trait that makes you more likely to reproduce than someone else, then you're going to have more kids. Okay?
Right.
Okay. If I bop you on the head, I'm not going to because you'll... Okay, but I know, but you're too big and I might bop you, but you're just going to get angry. Okay, so forget about you. If I bop you on the head and I kill you, is that natural selection? Tell me something. Are you alive or dead?
I'm dead.
Okay. What does death have to do with survival?
Nothing. Well, you're dead. You can't survive.
Well, does it have anything to do with survival? It means you haven't survived, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it does have to do with survival. Okay. So, is that natural selection? I bopped you on the head. I've killed you, right? You're as dead as a doornail, just like if a lion came along, grabbed you, and ate you.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not going to eat you, but you're still dead. Okay. I'm walking in the forest. A pine cone hits me on the head and kills me. Is that natural selection? What?
That's one heavy ass pine cone.
One less?
One heavy ass pine cone.
Oh, yeah. Probably a gray pine. They're massive. And from about 150 feet, you're gone. Okay? So, I'm dead. Is that natural selection? Okay. Doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't necessarily mean, it could just be that I'm unlucky. Has nothing to do with what traits I have. Some people might have thicker skulls than others, and they might survive. But in general, we'll say it's just an unlucky occurrence. Okay. Are humans still evolving, do you think?
Yes.
Any examples?
I actually heard this thing that we're going to start getting this bone behind our neck is going to start growing because we're constantly looking down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's true. Yep. Yeah. Yep. No one will be able to raise their head. They won't be able to see the lion coming. And they're too bad. I really enjoy the fact that all these people are looking at their phones while they're walking. A lot of times when I'm on campus, what I do is I stand right in front of them. I see them coming, and I just stay there. Okay? And then just as they're right there, I go, boo! Sometimes they drop their phone. It's not good. But
Better you than a car, though. I live right across the street from Darby, and there's a kid who was looking at his phone and looking and literally almost got hit by a car.
yeah, exactly. Is that natural selection? Yeah, I guess it is. Okay. Oh, if I got hit by a bus, is that natural selection?
Yes.
Sure. Just think about it. In fact, you might actually have traits that make you more or less likely to get hit by a bus. like this individual that you talked about. Tell me, who here, before they walk into the street, actually looks and see what's coming? Okay. Who doesn't? Okay. That's right. Like him, right? So who's going to leave more offspring? Yeah, exactly. So there's variation. Natural selection has favored those who are more cautious, and they're going to be the ones that actually get to have sex. Not you. Too bad. Okay. Also, it turns out that humans... What was that?
Nothing. It was just like saying it sucks for him.
Uh-huh.
He said you're
Because you're
gonna
not
have
getting,
sex.
you know, getting piping, bro.
I've had sex, but not just any offspring.
Yeah.
Hey, protection, guys. Protection.
Yeah. Good for him. Exactly. See? Now there's a responsible person. Okay? Right. Okay. So, humans, it turns out, there's how many of you are lactose tolerant, can drink milk? Okay? And can. How many who can't? Anybody? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, it turns out there's a reason that some people can drink milk or not. If you come from ancestors that herded ungulates that produce milk, then eventually those populations, there was a mutation, and someone actually kept producing lactase that you could digest milk with, and they survived better because they suddenly had a food source, milk, that others couldn't drink. Now, it turns out these other cultures, they did make cheese, but when you do actually ferment milk and stuff to make cheese, you're actually breaking the milk down, so it's actually useful as a sugar. But only some populations developed herding. They're called pastoralist cultures, and those are the ones that gave rise to individuals, just by chance, who were able to digest milk because they made the right enzyme. Okay? In fact, if you didn't, yeah.
I was just going to say, now isn't it better, isn't their trait more beneficial because, like, dairy products aren't really good for you, and they're usually in processed foods, so now...
Well, that
Have
perhaps.
it, then
but-
maybe your health is better.
Exactly. So, but we don't, that's what the nutritionists say, but they keep changing. Okay? So, like, for example, I like butter. Okay? Margarine is just a way for people who make corn syrup to sell it.
Margarine's crappy butter. Sorry.
What?
Margarine's crappy butter.
It's not, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're going to eat stuff with butter, you might as well enjoy it. Just don't take a whole stick and eat the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't do that, right? Okay. So, now, it turns out there's other things that show that certain human populations have changed in response to the environment than other than let's say Americans, for example, or Europeans or anybody else. Tibetans actually make a different form of hemoglobin, and it allows them to survive at very high altitudes, especially their babies. When you're over 15,000 feet, it's about 30% less oxygen. It's bad. Very difficult. If you've ever been at that elevation, eventually over time you build up the number of red blood cells you have to compensate, but there's a trade-off there. You're more likely to have a stroke. So the Tibetans, over time, some had mutations that allowed them to make a slightly different variant of hemoglobin, and now they've got hemoglobin that's better at capturing oxygen. In fact, as we're going to learn, they actually inherited it from these archaic humans called Denisovans, like Neanderthals, okay? And we'll get to that later. Okay. besides biological populations, does anything else evolve? Can you think of something that evolves?
Viruses.
Huh? Okay, but we'll say they're alive. Okay? Anything else? Who in here has a car?
Like a car?
Car, yeah, drive car. Yeah, what does that have to do with it exactly? They're not natural, I know. Okay, but tell me something, are all cars the same? And have cars changed from when they were first? What?
Yes.
Yes, they have.
Yes.
Okay, so what kind of cars do you like?
70 Charger.
A what?
1970 Charger.
Okay, why?
Black. I'm sorry?
Why?
Performance, body shape.
Okay, good, exactly. What kind of car do you like? Why would you buy a car? What feature of a car would make you want to buy that car and not something else?
The gas mileage.
Okay, another trait. That's like having thick fur or thin fur, right? So cars with better gas mileage, especially when the price of gas goes up, in other words, the environment changes, people are more likely to buy them than a gas guzzler. Okay? Obviously, price, that's selection. You're saying, oh, I'd rather not spend as much money. Of course, I don't get the same car. Some of you want something like that's got real performance, like the Charger, the 70 Charger, or how about a Maserati,
2020 Corvette.
right? Or Corvette, anything like that. Bugatti that, you know, I mean, all kinds of stuff that you can get yourself killed in that might actually shorten your life, but still would be fun to drive. Okay?
How would it shorten your life?
Hi?
How would it shorten your life?
Oh, because you're driving 200 miles an hour down a narrow city street. And if you hit a person, no biggie.
Yeah, right.
But if you hit, yeah, exactly. Okay. So, in other words, cars actually evolve because some people buy more of certain types of cars than others because they have certain traits. And that's why cars actually change through time. In fact, it's always, it's a new thing, so that's why everybody wants now whatchamacallit, electric car, Tesla, right? Okay. Okay. So, the basis, though, for differences is mutation. Okay? And we went over mutations and how they happen. Remember when during meiosis, occasionally a base pair is substituted with another one. It might change a protein. Most mutations probably have little effect or a bad effect. Occasionally a mutation will come along, like the Tibetans with their hemoglobin, that benefited them at high altitude. Okay? So mutations don't happen for a reason. They happen randomly with respect to fitness, whether they're helpful or not. Okay? So, the thing is, that's the basis of all variation, and we're going to learn one of the things you need for evolution by natural selection is for selection to be able to work on differences. Okay. So here's the requirements for evolution by natural selection. And by the way, selection and evolution are different. In fact, I'll go back. Okay. So this is what's required for evolution to happen, evolution by natural selection. There has to be variation. Here's one with a longer neck. Everybody else has a short neck. If they were all had the same neck, they were all identical, it wouldn't matter which one got their head chopped off. But this one's pretty conspicuous. Okay? That variation has to be heritable. That means you have to be able to, your offspring have to look like you for evolution to happen. If, let's say, you were a chicken and it's just as likely that your offspring would have long necks or short necks or medium necks, then it's not heritable. And then selection, in this case the axe, individuals with certain traits, heritable traits, are more likely to survive in certain environments than others. In this case, if you have a short neck, at least for now, maybe not tomorrow night, but for now, you're not going to be dinner. Okay? And it turns out evolution by natural selection is the only way you can actually have a population that becomes adapted to its environment. That environment, not any other environment. Okay, so these are all adaptations. We've got a snake, probably a poisonous snake that's perfectly camouflaged so that the prey don't see it. We've got giraffes, some with longer necks than others. There's famine. It's probably going to be the leaves that are higher up that are left over. They might survive better. This is an insect that looks like a leaf. It is, again, camouflaged. Camouflage is this one trait that might increase an individual's survival. And then we've got polar bears, same sort of thing. So these are adaptations. So here we go with antibiotics. So antibiotic resistance, it's a major problem. Antibiotics, when they first came out, they were a godsend. They still are. But there's now some bacteria that are immune to antibiotics. Okay? It's kind of like if I was going to pump poison gas in here. Now, probably everybody would die, but let's say there's a mutant in here. Probably you're the mutant. You're resistant to the poison gas. Everybody's going, right? And you're going, what's the problem? Right? Okay. So that's what antibiotics are like for bacteria. Antibiotics only work in bacteria. They don't work on viruses or fungi or anything else. There's antivirals for that. Okay. And bacteria reproduce quickly. So let's say in 20 minutes, you've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, probably 16. Double in 20 minutes. You've also got, lo and behold, 2 mutants. You have a red mutant and a blue mutant. Are those mutations beneficial or harmful? We don't know. Over more time, bacteria continue to reproduce, and there's even a new mutant, a yellow mutant. Now we're going to put in the poison gas or the antibiotics. It wipes out all the bacteria except the red mutant. For some reason, just by random luck, they have a mutation that protects them from the antibiotic. They survive. The new population is all their offspring, right? They're the ones that survived, they reproduce, and suddenly you've got a population that's completely resistant to the antibiotic. Okay.
So what we ended up building was basically a petri dish, except that it's 2 feet by 4 feet. And the way we set it up is that there are 9 bands, and at the base of each of these bands, we put a normal petri dish thick agar with different amounts of antibiotic. On the outside, there's no antibiotic. Just in from that, there's barely more than the E. coli can survive. Inside of that, there's 10 times as much, 100 times, and then finally the middle band has 1,000 times as much antibiotic. And then across the top of it, of course, thin agar that bacteria can move around in. The background is black because there's ink in it, and the bacteria appear as white. First, you see they spread in the area where there's no antibiotic, up until the point they can no longer survive. Then a mutant appears on the right. It's resistant to the antibiotic, it spreads until it starts to compete with other mutants around it. When these mutants hit the next boundary, they too have to pause and develop new mutations to make it into 10 times as much antibiotic. And then you see the different mutants repeat this at 100. And after about 11 days, they finally make it into 1,000 times as much antibiotic as the wild type can survive. And so we can see by this process of accumulating successive mutations that bacteria, which are normally sensitive to an antibiotic, can evolve resistance to extremely high concentrations in a short period of time.
Okay, so you said they have to pause until there's mutations. Are those mutations, what causes those mutations? Anything? Does the environment cause mutations, or do the mutations just happen randomly? Randomly, okay. So it's not like, oh, bacteria go, oh, I better evolve resistance, right? Or, oh, the environment is so bad, it causes mutations. Occasionally that can happen, like in Chernobyl with radioactive materials, but in general, mutations are random. Okay. Okay. Another good example, the Industrial Revolution started off in England in the late 18th century, early 19th century, 1700s, 1800s. They started using coal. It's a fossil fuel. Makes lots and lots and lots of heat and energy, and you can use that to drive machines. In this case, whatchamacallit machines, where you heat the water. Anyway, okay, steam engines. Okay, so before then, people were burning coal to stay warm, but before then they weren't. Okay, so most of the trees had kind of whitish bark. And there's these there's two versions of this moth. It's called a peppered moth. There's a dark version and a light version. And here you can see, you can't see it, but the light version is camouflaged, whereas the dark version, stop that, right here, is conspicuous. And birds obviously are going to eat the dark version. Well, coal dust coated everything, literally everything. Everybody, when they were burning coal, everything was just plain dirty all the time. Wasn't good for the people, of course, but they were warm, so who cares? Anyway, there's something called a polymorphism in this case, it's genetic polymorphism, where there are always a few dark morphs. as the tree trunks became blacker and blacker, the environment changed. Which ones could you see? Well, you could see the light ones. And let's see, where's the dark ones? I don't see it. There, oh, here we go. Here's a dark morph. And over time, dark morphs were much more common. In other words, they had higher fitness in the new environment. So, over time, because the environment changed, certain versions were more adaptive. And then, as pollution controls were instituted in the 20th century, 1970s, they stopped burning coal and everything cleaned up. And suddenly the white morphs were actually more likely to survive and reproduce. So it went back to the way it was. Okay, let's see. Okay, so hold on. Okay, does natural selection act on the individual moth or the population? So what level does natural selection act on, the individual or the population? Population changes, but selection, what does it act on? In other words, some individuals have a full house, other individuals have nothing. Anybody not done? Okay. Selection always acts on the individual. Always. Okay? Some individuals have the trait, they survive. Other individuals don't, they die. The population is then going to change. Only survivors move on. This is a hard thing to understand. It is. But you'll get it. Okay. So, we've been talking basically about survival. But organisms go through different stages from the time that they're a zygote, just a single fertilized egg, all the way until they're adults. Then they breed. The number of offspring they make, whether their gametes are any good or not. So there's different selection on life stages. So if the zygote, let's say the sperm and the egg, one of the sperm have a mutation in it, the zygote, they might form a zygote, but it might not survive. Let's say it does. They're adults. They can actually reproduce sexually. There's something called sexual selection. This is what we were talking about earlier in terms of, let's say, some people are more attractive than others. Usually we see it like males are usually, birds are brighter in color, and sometimes they do a whole big dance, so the females like them, or some males have bigger weapons to fight each other with. So there's sexual selection. Some individuals are more likely to breed compared to others. Some individuals, there's variation in the amount of offspring they produce. And then we'll learn about gametic selection. A lot of females can actually store sperm. Some sperm might have higher fitness than others, and so on. So here's selection again on survival. Good example, the English, as they were wont to do, loved everything that was English, and they brought over bunny rabbits from England, and among other things. And eventually the bunnies overran all of Australia, ate everything out of house and home, including all the grasses for their livestock. So there was an ecological disaster. Well, someone discovered a virus from South America that was lethal to bunny rabbits. They released it into Australia, and 99.9% of them died. It was great, except just a few actually were resistant to the virus. They reproduced, and they created the next generations. They weren't, instead of 99% mortality, it was now about 30%. The virus became less virulent, and the bunnies developed some resistance, but at least they're not overrunning everything. So that's selection on survival. Here's an example of selection on fecundity. All these plants and all these different seeds. Some plants are likely to make more than others. Okay. And then there's something called sexual selection that we'll get into, including male-male competition or female choice. You may wonder, well, why do the females get to choose? And we'll get to that too. So, first of all, there's different modes of selection. There's directional, stabilizing, destructive, and we'll take a look. So, we have a population. We have some measurement, in this case 0 to, let's say, 100, just for show. And most of the population, let's say it's height, most of the population falls in the middle, so that's called the average. Okay? Now, certain part of this distribution might change. For example, let's say it was the wolves with thinner fur, which is down here, or thicker fur up here, right? And let's say it gets colder. Which ones are going to die? These are going to die. So let's take a look at this. We've got beak size along the x-axis, and these are birds, and they eat seeds, and everything was copacetic in about 1976, and then there was a famine. The plants stopped producing seeds. All the softer seeds got eaten up. The only ones that were left were big, hard seeds. Only the birds with the biggest, hardest beaks were able to crack those and survive. All the other ones died. So you can actually see the population crashed all the way down to from about 1,400 down to about 200 in 1977. If you actually looked at the size of the beaks, you see that over time, the average was about 8.8, and now it was actually about 9.8. In other words, individuals with smaller beaks didn't survive as well. Only those with large beaks survived and reproduced. So this is called what's called modes of selection, and that includes directional selection. directional selection, and we can actually show it. Okay, so beak size, we'll say 1 up to 20 centimeters. This is on the y-axis, it's the number of individuals or the proportion, so 0 to 100. And so there's only big seeds left over. Selection, this is directional selection from smaller beaks to bigger beaks. All these individuals died. And only these individuals were left over. And so now we've got a population that looks more like this. Bigger beaks. The drought ends. The plants start producing all sorts of seeds. Over time, selection favors smaller beaks again, and it goes back to where it was. That's also directional selection, bigger or smaller. Last thing we kind of looked at, and let's say fur density. 1,000. The mean is 500. Okay. So this is wolves. It's going to get colder now. Okay? It's going to get a lot colder. You'll see. The whole room is going to cool down. Okay. So if it's directional selection, what's going to happen if it gets colder? Is the fur going to get thicker or thinner in the population? Huh? Thicker, right? Okay. So we're going to wipe out all the lightly haired wolves. They're all dead. Sorry. Bye. Okay? And all we have is this remaining group that are thicker. Okay. And so now it's going to look more like this. Okay? And we'll say 800 fur thickness instead of 500. That's directional. It could have gone the other way. For example, we could, let's say it gets warmer again, so the fur is going to get thinner. All those guys with thick fur, they're all dying of the heat. Just think about walking around with a big fur coat when it's 90 degrees out. And this is what's remaining. And so we'll go back over here. And we'll say it's down to 400. Okay? So, in other words, that's also directional selection. Okay. That's, I think, what, we're done? Yeah, we're done. We'll get to stabilizing selection next. Anyway, good class. It was fun anyway. That's a good one. Why does no one talk in circles? Because there is no point. Okay. We'll do a little math here. So, okay. So that's where we're left off. Now we're going to look at a different kind of selection called stabilizing. And a good example is birth weight in babies. So usually low birth weight babies aren't doing as well. They have more problems. Obviously, if they're really underweight, they're really having problems. And their fitness is lower, and so mortality is higher. And this is the mortality curve right here. And so these babies here are not doing well. So there's selection against them. There's also large birth weight babies, let's say over 10 pounds. Now, these babies on their own would probably be doing pretty well, but the problem is that as birth weight goes up to a certain point or over a certain point, maternal mortality, in other words, the death of the mother from childbirth goes up as well. And so again, we've got high mortality, and if the mother dies, probably the child is going to die too, and so we have selection against that. And so now we still have the same mean, which was about, what was it, 7.3% or 7.3 pounds. But instead of the same mean, 7.3, but as you can see, there's less tails on either side. So small birth weight aren't doing well, big birth weight are gone. So now you just have mainly babies between, let's say, 5 and 10 and 9 pounds. Okay, that's stabilizing selection. In other words, the selection forcing everything towards the mean. Okay. And then finally, there's something called disruptive selection. So imagine you've got birds again. They're seed eaters, and there's two sides. There's plants that make two-side seeds. One species makes small seeds, one makes very large seeds. Birds that have small beaks are much more are much better at foraging on the small seeds. Okay, they're much more exact in picking them out from the background, whereas birds with large beaks are much better at cracking the large seeds. Since there's no medium seeds, and also a medium beak is basically not going to help you either way. You're going to be kind of bad at both directions. And so we have something called disruptive selection. And you can take a look. We have beak size, 0 to 20. This is our curve. We'll say 10 was the mean. And now there's going to be selection against all birds in between. So we're going to wipe them out. Now all we have are birds with large or small beaks, period. And so we have a distribution. It's called a bimodal distribution. 5 and 15. And that's disruptive selection. Okay? So those are the three main sorts of selection. We're going to talk about a few others here, but that I want you guys to be able to pick out. So if I ask a what's the kind of selection where there's a selection that favors either large or small, but nothing in between. You would say, out of A, B, and C, and D, you'd say disruptive. Okay. So most selection wipes out variation, right? Okay. Let's say this is beak size again. And let's say it's now favoring large beaks. Okay, so all the variation, including the phenotypic variation and the genetic variation, is lost if there's strong selection, and so all these individuals and all the alleles that are associated with beak size with medium or small beaks is lost, and the population only has large beak alleles. Okay, so that removes variation, and selection can only work on variation. So if we remove all the variation, the population really can't respond. But there are certain kinds of selection that maintain genetic variation and phenotypic variation. And it's called balancing selection, and there's different kinds. One that you can actually have what's called balancing selection, where it maintains genetic variation. Now, there's a couple of other ways as well. One is Darwin's tangled bank, where there's so much environmental heterogeneity that all the alleles that are in the population are maintained. Each is favored in a different patch. We looked at involves sickle cell anemia. Now, you know sickle cell anemia is bad, right? So if you have two bad alleles, you're not going to survive. But if you are a heterozygote, if you remember from way back when, that means, so the two alleles are, we'll say, H, A, and H, S. And then the three genotypes are actually, we've got them right here. Okay. So, okay, it's HB. So the dominant phenotype, forget about HA. It's HA and HB and HS. So if you're the dominant, nah, I don't want that. Okay, so normal hemoglobin is HB. Okay, everybody, I'm sure virtually everybody in here has HB. Carries oxygen well, everything's fine. The other homozygote is HA, S, HS, and remember, these are the ones with sickle cell anemia, and they usually die by the time they're, let's say, 20. Okay, so we're getting ready. Okay, these get wiped out. But the heterozygote carriers, in other words, HB, HS, they don't carry oxygen quite as well, but when there's malaria around, they have the highest fitness. The normal hemoglobin, they're susceptible to getting malaria, okay? And they suffer, they have higher mortality. But these guys right here, they do much better when there's malaria around. So they're heterozygotes. In other words, both alleles are favored when there's only one of each. Okay? So neither allele is going to actually go away. They're all going to be maintained in the population. Even though on occasion you get a few HS where they have sickle cell anemia, that's not good. But at least there's some individuals when there's malaria around that are going to survive, and they're always going to have both those alleles. So those alleles aren't going away. So that's called heterozygote advantage or heterozygote superiority. Okay. So that's one way where the environment, there are all kinds of different patches of habitat with, let's say, different colors. And so this is what you commonly see. You've got these lizards here, and some are brown and have mostly on trunks that are brown trunks, and others have different patterns that fade into that background. So that's called, okay, we've got some red color. We've got another patch next to it that's blue color, another patch next to it that's green color, yellow color, right? Okay, let's say you have different alleles that give you an organism, let's say lizards, different skin color. Even though a yellow lizard over a blue background is going to stand out, that's true, so it's going to go away, but a yellow lizard over a yellow background is going to do fine. So it's going to stick around in that habitat. Likewise with red, it's going to show up in a green background, but it's going to disappear in a red background. So let's say there's an allele for red, an allele for blue, for green, and for yellow. Okay? All those alleles are going to stick around because of the variation in habitat. And then finally, there's something called negative frequency dependence. I'll give you another example besides this. Anybody in here like to eat salmon?
Yes.
Okay.
Albacore.
Albacore is tuna.
Oh, you're right.
Okay.
I don't know my fish.
That's okay. So, I like to grill salmon, right? You know, big slab of salmon. Okay. So, normally most of the salmon we eat here is probably Chinook or Atlantic. Anyway, their normal life cycle is they're born in a natal stream. They spend the first year in the stream. Then they go out to sea. The sea is kind of dangerous, right? There's lots of things that want to eat them. But in the sea, there's lots of food. They grow. After 3 years, they come back. They go back to the natal stream. They spawn and they die. And when they're fully grown, let's say the average size is 30 pounds. There's some much bigger, some much smaller, or around that, but they're big. Okay. Now, there's a different strategy for some of the males. They're called jack salmon. And they're little guys. After they spend the first year as little fish in a stream, they go out to sea for 1 year, and then they come back. And their average size is about 5 pounds, okay? Much smaller. Now, normally, the big salmon, when a female is ready to lay her eggs, she kind of scoops out all this gravel for a nice spot, lays her eggs, and then a big male or a couple of big males come along and release sperm. They sometimes duke it out. So if you're big, the bigger the better. You get to fertilize the eggs compared to, let's say, a male salmon that's slightly smaller. Okay, so all's good. Except that, obviously, so being big is good. But there's these little guys that are 5 pounds. So they don't stand a chance, right? Well, the thing is, being small, like me, you know, I can get behind this rock here and hide. And when a female comes along, lays her eggs, while 2 males are duking it out, I can go, sperm, sperm, sperm. Oh, well, that's bad. And then I go back, okay? That's really inappropriate. But anyway, you can see that's the sneaky strategy. And if there's alleles that are associated with maturing at 5 pounds instead of at 30, and also there's not that many spots to actually hide. So if you're rare, you have an advantage. If you're the only 5-pound salmon out there and everybody else is big, you're cool. You hide behind all these different rocks. Each female comes out, lays her eggs. All the males are duking it out. You shoot in, fertilize the eggs, and go away. And then you go off to the next female. Okay? So it's very good. But if there's a lot of 5-pound jack salmon, not so good. There's only so many hiding places, and the chances of you actually fertilizing eggs drop precipitously. Okay? So this is called negative frequency dependence, namely that if there's only a few of you, you're likely to have a lot of success. If there's a lot of you, you have much less. Okay, so negative frequency dependent. So that also maintains all this genetic variation in the population as well. Okay, so now we're going to talk, we already talked a little bit right now about sex, and I kind of demonstrated for you. Not such a good thing, but so the question is, why is there sex? Well, of course, because it feels good. That's one reason. But if you actually look at it, sexual reproduction has costs. First of all, the first one is called is a twofold cost. Think about it this way. Okay. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and actually, and then we've got, okay, so let's just look at this. So let's say we've got 10 individuals, and they each make 1 offspring. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 offspring, right? What kind of sexual reproduction is that? Where you make a, huh? What kind of, okay, sorry. What kind of reproduction is it where each individual makes an exact copy of themselves?
Clone.
Huh? A clone, right. Asexual. Okay, that's good. Now, let's instead think about sexual reproduction. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. If there's sexual reproduction, how many offspring do you get? 5. Okay. Just think about it. If you're making 10, if you have a population of 10 individuals and you make 10 offspring compared to a population of 10 and you only make 5, which population is going to dominate in the future? The one making 10. In other words, having sex gives you a huge disadvantage in terms of offspring. You need a male and a female. Even though it feels good, right? It doesn't do you any good. Okay. So sex is expensive, and among other things. And then there's other things going on. If you just make a copy of yourself, all you have to do is hang out, eat, and then reproduce. But if you're sexually reproducing, what do? You have to look around for a mate. That can be expensive. Plus, there's sexually transmitted diseases. All kinds of bad things can happen. Like I said, I keep saying you guys should all have sex as often as possible, but there's some downsides to it, so maybe not so much. Okay. So the thing is, it turns out each time you have a mutation, let's say that's beneficial, it has to arise once in a generation among one individual, and then it's passed on to their offspring, right? So here we have mutation A. They give rise to individuals that are A. You've got mutation B. So if you're really, really lucky, you might get an individual that gets a mutation A and a B and leaves a population of AB. Okay? That's very slow in terms of whether the spreading of beneficial mutations. But if you have sexual reproduction, you have recombination. If you remember way back to the beginning of the semester, where each gamete is a combination, usually it's a maternal or paternal chromosome, but if there's a bunch of different chromosomes, it could be maternal and paternal, and then there's crossing over, so there's all kinds of genetic variation. If the environment never changes, and you're adapted to that environment, let's say with mutation A, and you keep making copies of yourself, everything's fine. But if the environment changes, the chances are that A will no longer be adaptive anymore. Okay? It might be B or C or whatever. Well, you get so many different variants of offspring with sexual reproduction that at least some of them are likely to survive and reproduce in some specific environment, in a changing landscape, right? So in that case, sex is advantageous because you're making many different kinds of offspring. Some, just by luck, are likely to have high fitness. in that new environment. Okay, so sexual recombination allows favorable mutations to spread much more rapidly through the population, and at least some of those are going to be adapted to the new environment. Okay. So this gets us to what's called sexual selection. Now we've been talking about natural selection. I come along, I give you food. I'm not going to bop you on the head. Okay? So you get food. I don't get anybody else food. You do well. You have lots of offspring. Okay? That's all good. That's survival. Someone else, I come along, I bop you on the head and kill you. That's not so good. Okay, so you're gone. So that's selection on survival, right? Now, however, some of you are probably more attractive than others, or at least some people consider you more attractive. And you're likely, I think I picked out one guy earlier who said, oh, let's say he only lived till 20 years old, but he had 80 girlfriends and he produced 80 offspring. His fitness is high, right? It's not because he survives better, it's because he's preferred, okay? In fact, it's likely that if some guy in here had 80 girlfriends and some of them were married and stuff like that, that a husband would probably catch him in the act and cap his ass, right? Okay? And so he might only live till 21, but he's got 80 kids. Okay. Was it you that I picked for that?
I don't know.
It might have been. Okay. You look like a player. Okay. Good for you. I was never a player, but you know, I can live gratuitously. Okay, so in that case, there's something about that individual, and the same thing goes for females, right? Where if you have some feature that makes you more attractive and more likely to have a mate, your fitness is going to go up, even if it shortens your life. Okay? This is sexual selection. And what?
What do you mean by fitness?
Okay, so we talked about fitness, that's surviving and reproduction. Because fitness means that you can pass on your genes to future generations. Normally with natural selection, you survive well, you reproduce. The future generations are made up of your offspring compared to someone else. Of sexual selection. That there are traits like okay, but in this case, Darwin noticed something. He noticed, the question is, first of all, why does sexual selection exist? And what does Arnold Schwarzenegger and a male toadfish have in common? Okay, let's see. Idea. So, and it's simple. They both produce small, cheap sperm. That's it. Females, on the other hand, what do they produce? They produce large, expensive eggs, and usually, if there's a limited amount of energy and resources, you can either have lots of cheap sperm or a few expensive eggs. That asymmetry in terms of how much each gamete is worth creates some very strange interactions in terms of how you maximize your fitness. Okay. Females, they produce only a few eggs. If you think about it, who do they want to mate with? They want to mate with a very high fitness male and their offspring are going to survive and reproduce very well. They don't want to waste their eggs on a loser male, right? Forget it. I mean, the guy's a loser. Why do I want to mate with him? Okay. Males, on the other hand, this is really unfair, but each of his sperm is worthless. Okay? 1 out of 400 million, each time he ejaculates, is likely to fertilize an egg. And even then, a lot of times, they're not having sex at all with a female. Okay. So, sperm are cheap. How do you maximize your fitness then in terms of the number of offspring? You have a sex with as many females as possible. Okay? So, now, that's not entirely true. It turns out that nature throws us curves, and we find lots of instances where females actually might want to mate with a bunch of different males if they have multiple offspring and they can store sperm from many different fathers. But in general, this is the way it is. So, often what happens is females all have about the same number of offspring, potentially. In humans, back in pre-industrial times, most women had 7 to 18 offspring. Okay? That was it. Now that's a lot of kids, but how many actually made it to adulthood? Not that many. Okay? It was hard. There was all these diseases, there was wars, there was accidents, all kinds of bad things could happen. Okay? So let's say you had 10 offspring. If you were lucky, 2 of them made it to adulthood and bred and made new babies. Okay. Let me see, where was I going? Okay, that's fine. So the females are limited in terms of how many offspring, and what they want to do is they want to only have sex with the best males so that their offspring are more likely to survive and reproduce. Okay. The males, on the other hand, of course, want to have sex with as many females as possible and father as many offspring. So what kind of thing can increase their chances of finding a mate? Well, in a sense, males are fighting over females. Females are the ones that get to choose because they've got to maximize the best male they can find. Okay? So, this is the bird of paradise. The male is on the right. The female is on the left. The male is brightly colored. Now, do you think, I know it looks really beautiful, but which gender is likely to survive better?
Oh, what with the beautiful feathers?
What?
The one with the beautiful feathers.
Why is he going to survive better?
Because it's the whole mating thing about the attraction.
Forget about that. I'm talking about survival.
Temperature maybe changes and it's
What about predators?
predators.
Who's going to stand out to predators?
Okay, so the other one's surviving.
Exactly. So, in other words,
So they can blend.
this guy is going to be eaten by predators. That goes against natural selection. If you have a trait like that, it should disappear immediately because your fitness, in terms of survival, goes right down to the bottom. Okay? So Darwin saw this and said, why do we have things like that? That's a monster. I know it's pretty, but selection should wipe it out. Just completely wipe it out because they're not going to survive very long. And that's when he came up with, like you pointed out, where these traits are highly attractive to the opposite sex. Okay? In other words, it increases the chance of actually finding a mate, not necessarily surviving. In fact, if if you have such high quality genes, you can afford to have these bright feathers, even though it makes you obviously stand out to predators because you can escape. Okay? We have sexual selection, and it usually comes in two forms. Either males compete against other males, like in a big fight, the one left standing gets to mate, and that's called intrasexual selection. Intra means within, so the same sex, competition within the same sex. Okay. Then there's the other way around. Males are still competing, but now it's females who are choosing. Okay? And this is called intersexual selection, where one gender chooses the other. Okay? And the male with the flashiest characteristics is the one that gets to mate. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay, here we go. Okay. What? Okay, so they're displaying right now. They're saying, see, I'm walking side by side. It makes them look bigger. They're saying, look at me. You should be scared. Go away. Uh-oh, comes another one. Okay. Okay. So that's a That's an example of a harem mating system, right? One male. By the way, once the breeding season starts, that male, he's not eating very much. He's just having sex. So usually, after the first 3 weeks, he gets replaced because he's completely worn out from having sex and fighting all the time. I mean, this is what guys do. I mean, how many guys in here go to a bar and like to fight? Right? I mean, it's great. I've always enjoyed it myself, even though I get the crap beat out of me all the time. Okay, so now that's male-male competition. This is female choice.
First thing you do is you're sitting on your perch and click, you fly away. Once you're out there, you come swooping in, do a loop-de-loo in the air, land on the perch, and at the end of that, what the males do is they lean over, lift up their tail, quiver the tail slightly, and nail their feathers against their sides. And now you're going to do a moonwalk, and this is the only known case of birds moonwalking to my knowledge. But they basically do these little steps backwards, and it looks like a Michael Jackson slide. It's very nice.
So there's a female.
What's the name of the bird?
It's called a red-headed mannequin.
I love it.
It's in South America. So in that case, that's female choice. Let's see if we can actually. Let's see. No. Okay. So sexual selection affects how long an individual survives, the number of partners or mates that an individual has, how many gametes an individual produces. Okay. Now remember, natural selection is different. Usually has to do with mortality. But sexual selection is different. Okay, in case anybody hasn't finished. Anybody not finished? Okay, you all good? Okay, I'll stop it.
It has to be C. It has to be C. Please tell me. Oh shit. Let's do it over again. Explain. Because that's a lot.
Okay, it's B. It's the number of partners. Not the number of gametes you produce, it's the number of particles. Okay.
Bye.
Hey, the Fantastic Four answers.